Okay, let's dive into something pretty fascinating today. We're turning our attention over to Skopje, exploring a specific school there. They call it the School of Applied Spirituality NX.
NXUS, right, applied spirituality.
Exactly. And we've been looking at, well, excerpts from their official website.
So direct source material.
Yeah, think of it like our map into what they're about, you
Yeah.
know, giving us a direct look at their teachings, their whole philosophy.
Okay.
And our mission here for this deep dive is basically to take those website excerpts and really unpack them for you. We want to get a handle on what the school offers, what their core principles seem to be.
And especially the practices, right? You mentioned Reiki.
Yes, zoom in on the practices, particularly, the Reiki energy healing side of things. We're aiming to pull out the key insights from what they've put out there.
Sounds good. So where do we start? NXUS itself.
Let's start there. The School of Applied Spirituality, NXUS. The material suggests a pretty broad scope, actually.
Yeah, it's not just one thing. They mentioned applied spirituality, obviously, but also esoteric and exoteric knowledge, alchemy, Celestine light.
Right, and holistic healing using Reiki.
And how do they frame things like, say, esoteric knowledge or alchemy in this context?
Well, the source implies they see these as sort of different facets of a wider spiritual understanding, exploring deeper stuff, maybe less common knowledge, alongside the more, accessible bits.
Okay, so different layers of understanding. And Celestine light.
That seems to be part of their specific framework, maybe a core concept for them. It's clear they're not sticking to just one narrow path.
Makes sense for applied spirituality. But within that broadness, they do get specific about Reiki, don't they?
Oh, very specific. The source makes their core goal with Reiki really clear.
Which is?
They state they aim to return to the, quote, original way of channeling and healing with Reiki energy.
Ah, the original way, as Usui Sensei intended.
Exactly. As he intended and left as a legacy. That emphasis on the original method, that feels like a really central point for them, judging by the material.
Right. And didn't they also say something about being open beyond specific religions?
Yeah, alongside that focus on original Reiki, they explicitly state a goal to provide a space for discussing spiritual topics that go beyond any single religious viewpoint.
Which fits, again, with that applied spirituality idea, applicable across different paths.
Precisely. So let's dig into the Reiki specifics they offer. The source describes a systematic study, 2 main techniques.
Okay, what are they?
First one is called Soul Talk Reiki Ryoho and the Art of Listening.
Soul Talk Reiki Ryoho. That sounds intriguing.
It does, and it's presented as like a complete school in itself, structured over several years, 3 levels.
So a long-term commitment.
Seems like it. They say it covers subjects from different areas, suggesting it's pretty comprehensive.
Okay, that's one. What's the second technique?
The second one they offer seminars in is Jikiden Reiki.
Jikiden Reiki. I've heard of that. Often presented as very traditional.
Exactly. The material describes it as the original Japanese form of healing with Reiki energy, created by Usui Sensei. And crucially, they state it's taught exactly the same way it was 100 years ago.
Wow. So again, that strong focus on authenticity, historical origin, they're really hammering that point home.
Definitely. And it's not just about learning. The source also mentions they provide treatments.
Ah, so you can receive healing there too, using these methods.
Yes, individual treatments using both Soul Talk Reiki Reiho and Jikiden Reiki. You can learn it, or you can experience it.
Got it. Learn and receive.
And the way the material describes the learning path, it really stands out.
How so?
They call it a beautiful but serious and disciplined long-term journey through Japanese culture and the Japanese original way of healing with the energy called Reiki.
Serious and disciplined. That phrasing definitely tells you something about the level of commitment they expect. It's not casual.
Not at all. And this is where I think the source material draws a really important distinction. They explicitly differentiate their Soul Talk Reiki Reiho from other Reiki modalities you might find specifically in Macedonia.
Ah, okay. This sounds key to understanding their position. How do they differentiate it?
Yes, it seems absolutely fundamental to how they define themselves. They state, Soul Talk Reiki Reiho is based on studying and practicing 3 specific things: Gokai, Byozen, and Reiju.
Gokai, Byozen, Reiju. Can you unpack those based on the source?
Sure. According to the material, Gokai are the 5 Reiki principles. Like just for today, do not anger.
Right, the precepts.
Byozen is the technique for sensing energy imbalances, feeling where the healing is needed, like scanning.
Okay, sensing blockages. And reiju.
Reiju is the process, usually described as an attunement or maybe a spiritual blessing, where the ability to channel Reiki is passed from teacher to student.
Empowerment process.
Exactly. And the material really emphasizes that these three, Gokai, Byozen, Reiju, are presented as the absolute basics of Usui Reiki Ryoho.
The foundation.
Yes, exactly as Chujiro Hayashi-sensei is said to have learned them directly from Mikao Usui-sensei and passed them down unchanged.
Okay, so they're tracing a direct lineage for these core practices.
Precisely. And here's the really crucial part of their distinction, according to the source.
Lay it on me.
They explicitly state, and this is pretty direct, this is not another modality from the altered form of Hawayo Takata.
Ah, okay. That's a very clear line in the sand. Chihara-sensei being the person largely responsible for bringing Reiki to the West.
Right. So by saying their approach is not that altered form, they're positioning themselves as teaching something, in their view, pure, more original, Japanese lineage.
Contrasting it with what they see as changes made in other traditions, particularly the westernized ones.
Exactly. Understanding that distinction, emphasizing these fundamentals like Gokai, Byozen, Reiju, and drawing that line against what they call the altered form, that seems key to grasping their whole identity.
It really clarifies their niche and their claim to authenticity. Makes sense.
So, moving beyond just the Reiki techniques and that lineage focus, the source material gives us a bit of a broader picture, too.
Like what else they're involved in.
Yeah. It mentions that when they have space available, they offer lectures on various spiritual topics.
So learning beyond just the energy healing itself, broader spiritual education.
Seems so. They also reference a book that sounds pretty central to their work.
Oh, what's it called?
Handbook for Reiki, Usui Sensei, and Spiritual Teachers.
A handbook. Suggests a structured curriculum, a body of work supporting their teaching.
Definitely. And we get more clues from mentions of topics on their blog. Gives us a little more insight into their thinking.
Like what kind of topics?
Well, for instance, there's one concept introduced using a Nelson Mandela quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon."
Okay. Connecting education and spirituality.
Yeah, it explores this idea of a spiritualist versus a spiritual person.
Making a distinction there. What's the difference according to them?
Well, the blog excerpt, as described in the source, suggests it's subtle. Like anyone might be a spiritual person, but not every spiritual person necessarily studies the philosophy or practices specific techniques rigorously.
I see. So a spiritualist implies someone who engages in that disciplined study and practice, doing it correctly.
That seems to be the implication, yeah. A level of applied discipline. It's a nuanced take on the terms.
Interesting. What else from the blog?
Another topic mentioned is titled What is Not and What Is a Reiki Treatment, and it's apparently drawn from their handbook.
Okay, so they're actively defining and clarifying what constitutes a proper treatment from their perspective, setting standards, perhaps countering other ideas out there.
Seems likely. And there's also mention of an essay series explaining something called the Yugen method of healing taught at the school.
Yugen method.
That's another term.
Yeah, presented as one of their healing approaches. And one essay topic mentioned is, when is now in the present?
When is now in the present? Sounds quite philosophical. Exploring ideas like presence, mindfulness. Exactly. It points towards the philosophical underpinnings of their practical work. It's not just technique.
Right. The why behind the how.
And bringing in some broader perspectives, the source material also includes a quote attributed to Carl G. Jung.
Oh, what's the quote?
Man must, after all, be changed from within. Otherwise, he merely assimilates the new material to the old pattern.
That's a powerful one. How does that fit in?
Well, it resonates really strongly with that idea of applied spirituality, doesn't it? And their description of the learning path as that serious and disciplined long-term journey.
Yeah, it suggests that for this school, learning isn't just about, gathering information. It requires real internal transformation.
Otherwise, the new knowledge just gets filtered through your old ways of thinking. It doesn't stick or doesn't change you.
It becomes superficial assimilation rather than deep integration. Makes sense in a spiritual context.
Definitely. And one more thing from the source, some really quite beautiful quotes about the word namaste.
Oh, yeah? From where?
From something called Oracles of Celestine Light Nexus 14, 811. So part of their Celestine Light material, presumably.
Okay. And what do they say about namaste?
It's described not just as, hello and goodbye, but as a word holding many truths.
More than just a greeting.
Much more. And saying it with humility and love, according to the source, means realizing a magnificent unity that connects all created things.
Wow, that's profound, tying it into a sense of universal interconnectedness.
Exactly. It points to a broader philosophical outlook that seems to really inform their whole approach.
So pulling it all together.
Yeah, pulling back from the details for a moment. This deep dive, it's really explored a school NXUS that positions itself as, well, a center for applied spirituality.
With a very strong emphasis on what they present as the original disciplined methods of Reiki healing.
Right, and really highlighting that distinction from other, perhaps more common forms.
We've seen that their approach isn't just technical training, it includes broader spiritual, philosophical discussion.
Yeah, engaging with terminology, defining their practices quite rigorously.
And connecting everything to these deeper ideas, like internal change from the Jung quote, and universal unity from the Namaste passage.
So thinking about all this, what stands out to you, listening in, from this specific perspective, this focus on spirituality, on energy healing, especially the importance they place on getting back to original teachings and methods?
How does understanding these particular distinctions, this kind of comprehensive, disciplined approach, how does that resonate with maybe your own interest in gaining knowledge, perhaps quickly but also thoroughly?
And maybe here's a final thought to leave you with, something to mull over, drawing from what we've looked at. Think about that Carl Jung quote again. Man must, after all, be changed from within, otherwise he merely assimilates the new material to the old pattern.
When you engage with complex topics, whether it's applied spirituality, energy healing, or anything really, what does it genuinely mean to seek that change or understanding from within?
You know, beyond just absorbing external information or learning techniques on the surface, what does that inner work actually look like?
Something to ponder, definitely, on your own journey of learning and growth.